Well, my view is that for one, it's obviously gotten a bit more complex. The threat landscape has evolved. The bad actors have also kind of evolved. So obviously that complicates matters. And unfortunately, we face a labor or manpower crunch in terms of how do we manage cybersecurity for any enterprise or even for small companies. Different problems, but similar in many ways. For small companies, being small by nature, they cannot afford to hire cybersecurity professionals to look after. So they depend on providers, right, or third-party people to do that. For enterprises or larger enterprises, they may be able to hire people to look after their cybersecurity needs because of the increased threats and threat landscape, as I was mentioning. But nonetheless, not all of them are cyber companies, and not all of them may have enough capital or money to actually hire people or invest in technologies. So how do we get out of this? One of the ways to approach this is highly automate what you can automate in cybersecurity. So that would be one of the approach. But certainly the landscape has become far more complex than it was even a year ago. So I think the pandemic has kind of accelerated and exacerbated the situation. Not only work from home, but also work from anywhere. And so, if you want to call it wokeism or whatever it is, right, people now demand, if you've read the papers, many companies now demand to work from home. But there are really interesting quirks in different parts of the world, right? Take Japan, for example. When the pandemic happened, they actually demanded not to work from home because it is not in their culture to work from home. So that's a different need and requirement altogether. But certainly the way that we work is different. So you want access from anywhere, you want to work from anywhere, not only from home, but perhaps from your next neighborhood coffee shop stall, or from the Starbucks, or from any place that you have access to. And therefore that defines the problem to be one of access, right? How do you provide a safe and secure access? So that's how things have changed in a very, very short space of time. And like I said, over the past 2 years, the pandemic has kind of exacerbated the situation. And so what has happened is that companies like Zoom obviously has kind of capitalized on it. Other cyber companies who actually can take advantage of this working from home and providing level of security for that obviously has blossomed too. So we don't see that changing. This is going to be the new norm, the way that we work, access from anywhere. Yeah. Look, from a cyber point of view, it is always expressed as an element of risk. Whether it's a large enterprise or small enterprise, it's all about risk to your company, whether you can, whether your business can continue to operate if you are breached, right? Or you're attacked by ransomware and so forth. That's the question that we have to answer always. And so the challenges remain so. The labor challenge I mentioned to you earlier on becomes more pronounced because of the changing threat landscape. The nature of ransomware, for example, right? You've read about the big colonial pipeline thing, where it was just a simple issue of access, right? And privilege. That was a big issue for them. And what happened is that they actually paid the ransom, right? And so, is that a norm that you have to do? Questions to be answered, really. But these are the challenges that people face, and different people respond differently. But like I said, at the end of the day, it is how much of a risk do we see to the enterprise and what do we do about it, right? Yeah. So, and because the threat landscape has changed significantly, and I was mentioning the work from home, the new way that we are working has also changed the way that we respond to these threats. Access becomes important. Beneath that, there's an identity issue too as well. As you heard about identity theft, and if you could really mimic someone's identity or take over someone's identity or fake someone's identity, then you have access to many things, right? The other aspect of having access is that what privilege do you have when you get that access, right? So we need to control that, really. That's where Delinia comes into play in the areas of privileged access management. The other thing to consider is that you may be a CEO with a huge amount of access to every information in your company, but by policy, you should not allow that to happen all of the time. When you do not need access, you should not be given access, right? That's what we call just-in-time privileged access management. So these are the things that we look out for from a Delinia point of view. Also, you know that in organization or enterprise, people's roles change over time. And the access to information needs to reflect that role that they are playing in the company. So, for example, you could be a part of a project team one day, and tomorrow you'll be a project leader with different type of accesses. So these needs to be managed and controlled by policies, and they need to be automated as much as possible, so that to kind of reduce errors and leaks through manual intervention. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier on about different people having different access at different times. We believe that everybody should be treated as a privileged access, privileged access worker. That means they have access to internet. We should assume that, so that you take a safety first attitude towards that. The other aspect towards it is how people behave when they get access to systems, right? And this has to do with you know, if you are a simple bank user, you log into the bank app, you access your information, and then you do some transactions and you leave, right? But if you are the person providing that services, you have to analyze what kind of service that is being executed upon, and then people like to observe, right? When did you access that service? Was it 1 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the evening? And what is your behavioral pattern? So all of these things are, at this point in time, as you say, kind of intuitive, right? But we need to capture it, right, so that we can actually manage it. Yeah? And so policies will have that, behavioral analytics will have that, manage that a bit better, and make it all of that experience more secure. Yeah.
And so let's say I'm in an enterprise and I've engaged Delinia and we've implemented this type of protection.
Yes.
What would I notice? Like, what would be the benefits that I would experience having that sort of support in place?
Privileged access in itself is a journey. It's not a be-all and end-all. It's not a point solution issue. So the first thing we do is password management, password rotation, what we call vaulting, right? And many companies do this, right? But beyond that, I mentioned earlier on about you know, when do you access, how do you access, what's your behavior, what rights should you be given, does those rights change over time? And so once you implement our solution, Delinia, you'll get all of that, right? You have that level of granularity which will automate your cybersecurity process, which will help you look after all of this increased threat landscape like ransomware, because we know that a lot of the origination of the problem with ransomware and data leakages is through access, right? So by having granular control over access, you will kind of be able to manage all of these issues that you have. So that's immediate advantage that you have. But beyond that, we also look at access not by humans, but also by processes, by applications, by hardware machines. And so we manage that as well, because these are things that people typically don't pay attention to. And in large organizations where you keep on adding assets, IT assets, right? You lose track of what you have. And so again, back to that automation concept of making sure that the machine is doing what it's supposed to do, accessing information in the right way, sending information in the right way, in as much as a human being is doing so, right? So we manage all of that, and that's part of that journey I was mentioning earlier on. You'd get immediate returns on things like password management, basic password management, but then as you get granular, more granular about password management, about access management, you see all of these benefits come through, and it means a lot because it secures your assets, your digital assets, it secures your network, it secures all of your IT assets, your endpoint, and so on and so forth. And so this needs to be measured because it's a significant impact on any organization. And you know that the CISO is one of the most endangered species, right? So they last all of maximum 2 years, right, these days. But we hope that this kind of solutions, right, our intent is to make, exactly that, right? Sleep better, have high visibility of what's going on in your enterprise, your network, your digital assets. Yeah, precisely that.
Cool.